In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to put together a system that I've wanted to assemble for ages. A build that offers up not only the ultimate in performance, but in noise too. A whisper quiet system that spares no expense with silence in mind, and finally gets me hands-on with Noctua fans, coolers, and even a Noctua Edition power supply. Let's do this. The Corsair Nautilus cooler lineup is here, with a range of great designs to choose from. Whether you're after a 240mm or 360mm cooler, or a cooler with or without RGB fans, Corsair has you covered. The fans are daisy-chained for universal fan and ARGB control, and come alongside a whisper quiet pump. The RS fans that come included provide high airflow and high static pressure for great cooling performance, so why not keep your chip cool and learn more about the Nautilus range at the first links in the description below. Now, I'm slightly ashamed to say that I don't think I've ever built a Noctua PC here on the channel, and most of the parts for this build arrived months ago. The thing that's held me back has been the case, but more on that a little bit later. Now, the aim of today's system is of course to build a PC that offers the absolute best performance. It's for that reason that I've gone for the Ryzen 9 9950X3D and an RTX 5090. But I want to do so in a way that offers the best in silent operation we can achieve. Now, the RTX 5090 Founders is an incredibly silent 5090 design, which ticks the box for us there, and the Ryzen 9 9950X3D again offers up amazing performance, not only for gaming, but for productivity applications like editing and streaming too, and does pose a bit of a challenge because it's going to output a fair bit of heat. Now, these two components are basically the best CPU and GPU combo you can get right now. If you only want to game, the 9800X3D will be totally fine, as that's going to sacrifice some cores, but give you a little boost in terms of extra single thread performance. But for today's system, where I want to be able to literally do everything, these two make total sense. Now, the challenge to cool the Ryzen 9 9950X3D in a silent way is one that I'll be taking head on with this, the Noctua NHD15. Now, this is arguably one of the most iconic CPU tower air coolers ever built, and in our benchmarking using our standardized rig with a 14700K, it beats out a large number of the air coolers we've tested and knocks on the door with liquid cooled designs too. Now, you might be thinking, James, why have you not gone for a liquid cooler? Would that not have made more sense? Now, there's a couple of problems with that. The first is that with a liquid cooler, you've got the pump noise, and while that's not really a problem for most people, when you're focused on total silence, it can create some challenges. Now, inside of the first box is the NHD15 itself, with the smaller central fan, and then inside the other compartment, we should have two Chromax fans. I've gone for the Chromax Black Edition today, just because I think it's going to match the stealthy theme, and I'll be honest, the sand and brown isn't really for me. And you can see this tower air cooler is pretty ginormous, to say the least. Now, I'll be pairing this up across the rest of the build with some more Noctua Chromax goodies. These are the AF12X25 PWM, and they're the swap version. Now, what the swap means is that you can actually alter the corner pieces. So you can see here, by default, it comes with these nice little grey pieces, but you can swap them out for all black, red, green, blue, yellow, or white. So you can colour match them to whatever theme your build has to offer. I think I'm probably going to swap them out for the black nubbins, just to stick with the colour scheme in my system a little better. And you can see here, I've got a wide variety of 120mm designs to populate the case nicely a bit later. Now, I should probably talk a little bit about the case, because I mentioned earlier that I've been waiting patiently for this to arrive for today's build. And I've gone for this. This right here is the Antec Flux Pro. And I've had my eye on this case for today's build for one particular reason. Now, that's because Antec and Noctua actually announced that they have a version of this case on the way that's kitted out with Noctua fans as standard. But I didn't want to wait for that day. Oh no, we're going to do that today. So I'm going to go ahead and swap out all these fans a little bit later with our Noctua designs to get the whole thing to fit. Now, this is a case optimized not only for silent operation, but it's built really well. It's intended to be very easy to build in, and you get things, of course, like this little LCD display that's going to show CPU and GPU temperatures. As if that wasn't enough, you can actually take off this mesh ventilated panel here, and behind that you'll see a slightly funky layer at the bottom of the case. The power supply can actually be installed just in this orientation here. That's going to give you access to the cables at the rear, or you can install it in a generic orientation with the included adapter. I think that's going to be required today based on the power supply I've picked up for this build, but more on that a little bit later. Now, this case is going to be more than sufficient in terms terms of things like clearances, room for our big CPU tower air cooler, room for some extra exhaust fans at the top, and you get not only 3 fans at the front, they're 140s, and a 140 at the rear, 2 120mm reverse blades at the bottom too. I'm kind of tempted to keep these ones in on the basis they're reverse blade, but it's all going to come down to noise and whether they'll throw off the sound profile of the build today. In terms of some of the other components, I've also picked up this 48GB kit of Corsair's Dominator titanium. Now this one has got the RGB heat spreaders on. You can actually swap them out for non-RGB versions if you wish. And while I've got that option, I think a bit of lighting might be nice. We won't be going for rainbow puke, we'll be going for some nice subtle white LEDs, but I think that will be a nice touch. I've also gone for pretty much the best of the best in storage land, this Samsung 9100 Pro. Now this is a 2TB drive. You can get the 4TB if you want a bit more storage, and it has read and write speeds of up to 15 gigabytes per second. That's pretty nuts. You can actually read a full review of this drive over on our website, GeekaWhat.com, which I'll link in the cards section now. In terms of the motherboard I've gone for today, you can see here I've picked up this, the Asus ProArt X870E Creator Wi-Fi. This is a board designed for content creators. That basically means it's got a beefed up I/O, some slightly faster Ethernet, and some extra PCI lanes. For us today, it's going to be great. It's going to match the color scheme I've gone for. I think it will fit in with some of the Noctua stuff quite well, and it's a great match for our Ryzen 9950X3D too. In terms of the power supply, which I believe is the last part to talk about, I've gone slightly overkill. And when I say slightly overkill, I mean completely ridiculously overkill to the point I've kind of lost the plot. Yes. This is the absolute unit that is the Noctua Edition Seasonic TX1600. Right, sorry to interrupt, it's James from The Edit here, and I've just seen the price. And on Newegg, this is showing us a staggering nearly $1,200. Now, I don't mind an expensive power supply, but that's another level. Thankfully, here in the UK, it's around about $500, which is still a lot of money. But if you are going to build this system, please don't buy this power supply from Newegg. I do not spend anywhere near $1,200. Okay, you get the point. Back to the video. Now, for those of you that don't know, Seasonic are one of the biggest and most reputable PSU brands on the planet, and they actually OEM for lots of other brands. So if you buy a power supply from a competitor, there is a high chance it's probably made by Seasonic. This thing is enormous, and even that is an understatement. Now, it comes in this rather luscious little soft bag. That's rather good. And then, yeah, I mean, what the It's got a Noctua fan on. That was the primary reason I picked it up, because we're going to get that silent fan operation from the Noctua fan. You can see at the back here, it's actually got a hybrid mode, so you can have the fan when you need it, or when you perhaps don't need it, it turns off. And you get enormous support for things like graphics cards, obviously loads of SATA expansion. And look at this, 2 PCI Gen 5. So you could run, if you wanted to, dual 5090s. Do you want to see me do a follow-up of this video where we put a second 5090 in and see whether or not that's a waste of time or actually awesome? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm hoping, I haven't looked at the cables yet, I'm rather hoping these cables are super premium, and I would expect, oh, no way! I was expecting premium, I wasn't expecting that. Oh, that's cool. Now, not only are they individually braided with gold contacts, look at the gold contacts inside of that, it's amazing. They're braided in Noctua theme, so there's like actually a black and like a, I'm going to call it royal brown. I'm sure it has a different color than that, but it's not the brown you've seen on like Noctua's default industrial kind of aesthetic. These are a bit more forgiving, I would say. I'm going to clear some space, get all the parts ready, and put this thing together, because I'm actually excited to do something a little bit different for once. First things first, it is of course time to install the Ryzen 9 9950X3D, the chip that really put the final nail in the coffin for Intel's Core Ultra 200 series. That's obviously going to go in the top of the motherboard, just up here, nice and easily. I'm then going to follow up with the RAM in today's build, our Dominator memory. That's going to go in the 2nd and 4th slots. Again, really nice and simple. SSD is going to be next up. That's nice and easy on this Asus board. Just pull off the little toolless heatsink, slide the drive into place, and then pop the whole thing back down. Really rather simple. I'm next going to consult the manual for our Noctua cooler, as I've actually never installed a Noctua cooler before, and see what steps there are to actually follow. Okay, so for AMD, we just need to install these 2 brackets here. You can see a bit more of an exploded diagram of how that works just up there, and that will then give me the posts in which I can screw the cooler itself down onto. The only thing to just check is whether installing this will impede our motherboard screws. I don't think it will, so I'm going to go ahead and finish that off now before moving the motherboard into the case. this. I'll be leaving the outer fan off until a little bit later. And there we have it. That is looking, I'm feeling very heavy already. And I think that's ready to be installed into the case as the next step. Now, if you're not a regular PC builder, I would probably advise laying the case down flat for this stage. However, I think I can install it upright without too many problems. So I'm gonna go ahead and secure that down and use the included screws to fasten the motherboard into place with 3 at the top, 3 along the middle, and 3 down the bottom. Also then just gonna add the last of our Noctua fans on, and we've got a problem. Why didn't I think of this earlier? The RAM's too bloody tall. Oh, I'm so silly. Now, if you were to buy this RAM yourself, you could just take the RGB bit off the top. However, that feels like a bit of a cop-out in today's video, when what I could actually do instead is just replace this with low-profile memory. So I'm gonna replace it with some Corsair low-profile memory, and then, like the idiot that I am, put the fan back on. Now, to be clear, you can have the fan slightly offset. You just don't want the fan offset if you don't have to, because then you're blowing air around the cooler rather than through the cooler, and obviously the offset's limited by the glass panel. So yeah, I'm gonna replace the RAM, then put the fan on, and then go ahead and replace a couple of the fans in the case as well, including the one at the rear, the 3 at the front, and I'm gonna add a couple more fans at the top of the case, all Noctua, to not only stick with the theme, but to keep our audible levels nice and low. Okay, so we're getting somewhere now. Now the next step is gonna be the power supply. And as I mentioned earlier, the current I-shift orientation, which would allow us to install the PSU this way round, isn't gonna work. And let me show you why. While it will roughly get to the front of the case, if we spin around to the back, you can see the problem. That's completely flush, there's no room for the cables. Now, the good news is that Antec do include a standard rear mount adapter, a little something like this, and that's actually gonna go in the place of the existing cable pass-through. So let me take our big boy power supply out, then remove the built-in cable pass-through for the right angle mount. We're not gonna need that, but you might as well keep it safe for later. I should also point out too, this is a standard kettle lead, whereas the power supply we've got uses a special beefed up version. I don't know the official name for this, but it's not the same. So even if it fit, it won't work due to the wattage that's been used. I am gonna go ahead and plug in all of the custom cables to the power supply as well, including cables for the motherboard, the CPU, the GPU, and some SATA power for things like fan and RGB hubs on the chassis. And then the final piece of the puzzle is this, the GPU. Now, as you can see, this case is gonna support way bigger cards than our 5090 here. And boy, is that thing gonna be close to the CPU cooler. I hadn't even considered that as a factor, but I think we're gonna be just fine. Now, obviously, I could use the lower slot, but there's no need. This one's Gen 5, it's full bandwidth. So in terms of performance, that's the one you're going to need to use. So just be careful if you're gonna space that graphics card away from the cooler. I'm gonna remove the second and third PCI lanes. As I say, you'll fit, I think, pretty much every single type of 5090. Even some of the liquid-cooled ones will fit fine into this case. And as I say, once you've taken off those PCI lanes, you should then be able to install the 5090 into place. Oh, it's tight. However, it is in. That was actually a much tighter squeeze than I thought it was going to be. I'm not 100% sure if I love Asus's new, like, toolless PCI 5 latch. I think there are slightly better ways to do it, and I think at times, while clever, it can make things that little bit harder. The only other thing to think about is where the GPU power cable is going to run from. Obviously got our lovely reverse blade intake fans for the GPU, but they cover up any kind of space or grommets that you'd normally run the cable through. So I'm thinking instead, I'm going to run it through this bottom grommet just here. You do get some cable combs included as well, so I'll definitely need to put those on, and then into that lovely 45-degree angle connector on the graphics card. And with that, we've got a whisper quiet build. So let's go in for a slightly different montage than usual, and then check out performance, thermals, and crucially, the noise levels of this system. Looking at performance then, and I'm going to start with a slightly different metric today first, the noise. Now at idle, this system was returning an average of around 30 decibels. That's with no usage of the CPU or GPU in any particular fashion. Running a stress test where we had the GPU at 100% in Firmark and the CPU at 100% in CPU-Z, it did push the audible noise levels up, but still in the region of 50 decibels, which is extraordinarily quiet. Now, as far as gaming performance goes on this system, you'll be unsurprised to hear that it was pretty nuts. And on your screen now is a summary of all the results we got at 4K with this build. Taking a closer look at a couple of these, and why not start with Call of Duty's Black Ops 6, 4K high here delivered just shy of 170 FPS on average. Marvel's Rivals was slightly lower, but still great at 4K high, nearly 130 FPS, and even Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, one of the hardest games to run right now, especially when it comes to things like video memory, still delivered awesome results at that 4K top preset. We're talking an average of just under 125 frames per second. This is undoubtedly a premium build and something a bit less flashy than my normal 5090 systems, but I've been impressed with some of the Noctua kit in here. The fans are whisper quiet, the cooler is frankly awesome, and the power supply was just fun. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you've got a slightly peculiar build with multiple 5090s. You can find links to everything down below in the description for latest pricing and availability. Get subscribed to see more from me. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.